Raimundo Reyes, and we're here Community Advisors RSR. I'm the host, and Eduardo Rodriguez from LULAC District Council 18 is a co-host. And today, our guest speaker and our who's going to give us information about the community resources is Catherine Garcia Flowers, a good member of the community. Eduardo.
Yeah, my name is Eduardo Rodriguez. I'm a deputy director for young adults with the LULAC District 18 here in Houston, Texas. And we deal with a lot of different issues, not just with the schools itself, but primarily we're a civil rights organization, the oldest civil rights organization in for the Hispanic community in the country. So try to offer a lot of insight, and we love bringing people on board to give us some information that could help us in our day-to-day lives. So welcome, Ms. Flowers.
Thank you so much. And just so you know, I love LULAC. I would actually list LULAC as a resource. Like every one of us needs to be a member. When I hang up here, you reminded me. I will go on and make my application for membership because together we're better. Like the more numbers we have, the better represented we are, the more resources we can bring to communities and to the issues that need to be addressed. So thank you for the work that you do. And Raymond, thank you for the work that you do and having me here tonight. This is exciting. I know we had a little fluke last week, but that's okay. It just meant that it wasn't time for that. And so we'll take advantage of it now. But I am excited to be here. I actually had 4 meetings today, and in every meeting I always learn something new. And I'm like, why doesn't the community know about this? And so that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you. Definitely. Eduardo, I know you had some interesting questions about resources available for the community since we started working here in community advisors trying to share information to the public. Catherine, can you share any of the resources? I know you are very involved in the community. I know that you're the CEO of many nonprofits and you're you're a consultant, environment consultant. Mm-hmm. Before we get into the resources, can we talk about your background?
Yeah.
I think people need to know that there's this person who represents us out there whenever there's conversations when it comes to environment, when it comes to getting resources for the community.
Yeah, and you're right. I think that's important too. Foundations, people who give money, they don't give money to organizations, they give money to people. And likewise, it's vice versa. The community doesn't just trust everybody. They want to know who it is that is working on their behalf. And elected officials have not done a good job of making sure that communities are safe and getting what they need. And so now communities don't know who to turn to because there's lots of people that call themselves leaders or they call themselves that they run organizations, and the people who should be getting the services never get it. And so, yes, my name's Catherine Garcia Flowers. I'm a first-generation American. I love Honduras. The island of Raton actually has the 2nd largest barrier reef in the world behind Australia. And so that's really one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the environment, because growing up, we used to go diving in the water all the time, right? And I actually thought color was made in the water. Because when you're there, you see things you've never seen before. And so to see that kind of purple or pink or yellow or green, I just thought, oh my gosh, color was made here. If I have gone back to those same locations, and guess what? There is no color. Everything's white. And that is because global warming has affected the ocean waters and is killing things. The rising tides are because of the issues with climate change. And so it's so important for us to not only be educated about what's going on around us, but it's important to understand what's going on. And so, yes, as a Latinx representative of the community, I feel like I am always representing us all, because truth is we all experience the same things. right? So we shouldn't always be so divided. In addition to being a first-generation American, I actually created the international department under the Department of Neighborhoods for the city of Houston. I created the Department of Neighborhoods. At that time, we had called international communities. It was the Office of International Communities. They've changed the name to Office of New Citizens. But nevertheless, it is still an amazing resource for people who live in Houston. So that's the first resource that I'm going to talk about, that the city of Houston actually has a department called the Department of Neighborhoods that has a division under it called New Americans that want to serve people who are not citizens, people who have just become citizens. They have a whole gambit of resources in that office that sometimes does not even get used because people aren't asking for it. And so it's so important that our communities, when we have something that we need, we talk loud, right? The squeaky wheel really does get the oil. And we don't always do a good job of asking for it because sometimes we feel like we don't deserve it. Sometimes we're afraid that there'll be repercussions, but there are people every day fighting on behalf of communities. In addition to starting the Department of Neighborhoods, I've worked for banks to make sure that we have affordable housing. Like you said, I've run nonprofits. Matter of fact, I have my own nonprofit called Altruistic Endeavors, NGO, and we are committed to serving all people. And so there's English and Spanish, and you can always have a direct line to speak to somebody anytime you need anything. So that's the second resource that I'll list today. Altruistic Endeavors, NGO, serves all. And we have Spanish-speaking people. So no matter what it is that you need, you could email, message us on social media, and we will respond. I know I can talk a lot, but I can talk without taking a breath. So I want to make sure that I answer some of your questions and provide resources specifically that you guys might need.
Oh, well, I can hopefully come up with a couple of good questions, I hope.
Okay.
I know that that you have obviously a great passion for climate and the environment. So my first question to you is, in the bigger inner cities like we have here in Houston, are we still being affected by the age-old, I guess, chemical, lead paint and asbestos and things like that? And if not, if so, how is the city working with that? How are we as leaders, able to get the cities to work with us on those kinds of things?
So you broke up for some of that. I'm gonna go ahead and repeat your question just so that people will know what I'm responding to. So in Houston, we are the fourth largest city, third largest city in land mass, we're the most diverse city in the nation. We also have some of the most egregious environmental issues. You talked about lead paint. I mean, that's just one of a whole list of things. Even before COVID, we needed to be wearing masks because there's something called PM 2.5. It's the microscopic things in the air that's created from traffic, that's created from chemical plants, that spread this little micro thing that gets into your body and stops up your heart, stops up all kinds of things, and it makes people sick. And more than 5,000 people, this is not an exaggeration, the number is probably even higher. More than 5,000 people every year die because of PM 2.5. Houston has more chemical batch plants than any other city in Texas. That's crazy. And guess where those batch plants are? In our hardest served communities, in our fence line communities, in our unincorporated area. And those chemical batch plants also are putting out pollutions into our air, and our children are sick. Asthma is not a natural thing. But did you know 1 out of 3 children in Houston have asthma? Asthma is the #1 reason why kids don't go to school. We are higher than the national average. The national average is 1 out of 10. So why do we build schools so close to the highway? Why do we build schools next to chemical plants? So you're right, it is hurting our communities. So what do we do about it? Make noise. So it's interesting. One of the meetings I had today was with the city sustainability office, and the city has created something called the Climate Action Plan. Communities were mad because they said, oh, the city created this, and they didn't even talk to communities about that. And so now the city is making sure that communities and leaders and people have a chance to give their feedback, because they've created 2 groups. One, the youth group. So we want youth to be involved and to lend their voice, but they've also created an equity committee. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm uneducated. Or they say, oh, I'm not smart enough. Or, oh, I don't know anything about that. I can't go to these meetings. Yes, you can. We need you to come to the meetings because we need you to show up for your family. We need you to have a voice because you want to make sure that in your neighborhood, if it floods because of poor drainage, or if it floods because the city allowed some people to build something without thinking about the runoffs, that communities get the resources that they need to resolve that issue. But we need everyone to show up and make noise. So be present. So the Climate Action Plan, these committees are open to everybody. Everyone can join a committee and talk about why this issue is important to you, get involved in bringing resources. One of the things we need immediately in every neighborhood is air monitors. How do we know what's even happening if we're not monitoring what's in the air? It's just like the water. Why in the 4th largest city do we have days where you have to boil the water? That makes you wonder if there are days when they don't announce it that we shouldn't be drinking the water. I know the regular city water kills my plants. I don't even water my plants with the faucet water because in some communities, you don't know what's happening under the ground. Let's look at 5th Ward. So for folks who live in Kashmir Garden and 5th Ward, it is now considered a cancer cluster. There are people who for generations have been getting cancer and dying, and just thinking it was supposed to happen that way. We have more children in that cancer cluster that have cancer 10 times the rate than their colleagues across the US. Unacceptable. But guess what contributed to that? The railroad company used, paint the tracks with something called creosote. And the creosote got into the water, contaminated it. People were drinking it, using it. And now almost everyone there has cancer. Unacceptable. And so they're fighting very hard to bring resolutions and to find resources, but we need to know who's it affecting. And so we need people to show up. So we can't always be mad at the city. It's what our elected officials, even when you think, oh, I don't vote or I don't need them. Yes, we do. We need to hold our elected officials accountable. So the next resource I'm going to mention is your elected official, whether it's your city council, your state rep, your state senator, your congressperson, anyone who has to be voted in, your justice of the peace, call them. They are required to help you. We vote them in. It is their job to serve people. If you're not calling them, if all you're doing is complaining, you're a part of the problem. And so that should really have been the first resource. Call your elected official. You can call the mayor. You can call 311 and make an appointment. Even if they don't respond to you, let me tell you what they do respond to. So one of the jobs I've had, I used to be the governmental affairs for the lieutenant governor of Louisiana. And I never felt more powerful than when we would be in legislative session and elected would turn around to look at me to see if I gave a yay or nay about a bill. And a lot of times they relied on people like me and other community people because they will respond to whoever is calling. So if somebody calls and say, the street light isn't working on such and such a street, let's say 100 people call, they're going to say, oh my gosh, something's wrong. We need to address that because that's what's the hottest issue. That's that squeaky wheel gets the oil. So call your elected officials. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to give any information. So if you're trying to protect your privacy, you could say that. I don't want to give my information, but I want to let you know this is happening. But it's so important. Again, you're going to hear me say over and over again, show up. When we're not, oh, my camera's off. When you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking because it look like we're having camera. It's not showing that my camera is off, but I'm gonna turn it off and turn it back on and see if that helps. Did that work?
Yeah, your image is not showing, but we can continue like that. I guess for the moment being.
Okay, it's showing that I'm on. My light is green. But okay. Yes, call your elected officials. Let them know what you need. It is so important.
Yes, definitely. So yes, your elected officials are very important. They get elected by the people, so therefore they have to serve the people.
That's one of their jobs. They give information on grants that might be available. They give information on who in your community has gotten money to provide services. So yeah, definitely call your elected officials.
Definitely. Yes, talking about elected officials, at one point you run for office. That's how I came to know you because you were running for office, and it's a very community-driven campaign. A campaign that it was for helping the community based on issues. It was not about you know contracts or people that what that in those meetings that where they hang up and fundraisers. It was more based on the community. That's what I like about your campaign. Hopefully, you decide to run in the future for office because we need more. We need people who are community leaders and who decide to run for office and we're gonna get there into that office and they're gonna help the community.
I agree. I'm here to serve. So no matter what capacity, whether I'm just running an organization or I get to work for other elected officials, it's just so important that we make ourselves available because that's what servant leaders do, right? They serve and they make sure that communities are well.
Yes, definitely.
So since you said politics, I want to name a couple of other organizations that are actually great resources. I mean, people think of them as political, but the Texas Organizing Project is a great resource for communities. If you don't know what to do about something, if you want to get surrounded by other people who believe in the same thing you believe in, the Texas Organizing Project is another organization. No, I'm still here. It's showing that I'm here. So I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah, we're trying to work through it right now too. We'll see here. You were on a roll too. I was really getting into it. I was writing like
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, well, I hope y'all talk about LULAC as a resource every week too, because I do love the work that LULAC does. And they're located in every major city. So that's the exciting thing too, that they are a great organization.
well, we
Yes,
work hard
definitely.
at it. Yeah, we work hard at it. It's pretty difficult at times, especially right now because a lot of issues have to do with civil rights. But
Mm-hmm.
for all intent and purposes, we're pretty good with everybody. So
Yeah. Ray, you were going to say something?
Yes, so yeah, you mentioned Top. They're a really good organization. I have worked with them directly or sometimes indirectly, and they're a really great resource that help the community in terms of civil rights and fights in politics. They're really good in that, and also for advocating for people's rights. And there's tons of organizations right now. I cannot name them top of my head, but there's organizations that fight for the rights of the people whenever people they work and some people want to take advantage of them because of their legal status and they don't want to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
One of them being LULAC,
Yep.
and there's others. So there's a lot of organizations that are out there. They're willing to help you if you're listening to us. If you know any member of the community who needs help, either you can contact obviously Eduardo LULAC or you can contact uh, Catherine Flowers. She's a really great person and she will be willing to help you. And her
And
background, it's well, once you see her background and you Google it, you're gonna be like, whoa, she does a lot of work for the community.
And I will make sure that I list I'll post it on your sites, on your social media pages, but I'll post a link to all of the agencies that I mentioned today, including LULAC, so that folks have it right there on hand so you know where you can go to get what it is that you need. And you might not need anything today, right? But take this moment to get familiar with organizations you don't know of. Because right when you need it, you're going to say, oh, wait, I don't remember what it was. Or it's just important to spend time. I always say quality relationships are built on getting to know each other. And so get to know those organizations that we're talking about so that you can partner with them or maybe you can volunteer with them. And then when you need a resource, you'll be able to, you already have that resource relationship with them to get it.
Definitely, I
not only
agree.
that,
Go ahead, Eduardo.
we also have an opportunity to with a different leadership throughout the community, not just our community, but the our counterparts in the other communities as well. But you're absolutely right. And one of the things I like about the organizations that you're with, I've seen them and I've been able to sit down on either panels with them or interacted with them at different functions, what have you. And the thing I like about most of them is that they have a tendency to not quit, but more importantly, they have a tendency to offer creative criticism when it's needed. Not afraid to say, "Hey, you're wrong." And sometimes in our sort of community leaders, and definitely some of our politicians, that's a no-no. You don't say that to them. So, but it's nice to hear that.
No, you're absolutely right. It's crazy, right? That they don't want constructive feedback is so important. You can't grow if you don't get constructive feedback. So yeah, you're right.
Yes, definitely, I agree. Since you're the CEO of NGO, a nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, is there a way people can get involved and volunteer for your nonprofit and the community work that it's doing, or for the kids who are listening to us, or college students or high school students who might be looking for internships or volunteer opportunities? I know that you're also part of an organization that fights for the environment.
Yeah.
what's the name of that organization? Moms
Moms
Clean Air
Clean Air
Force.
Force. So there's a couple of groups that I'm very active with. So the Moms Clean Air Force, and I advise everyone, even though it says moms, Moms Clean Air Force is over 1.5 million moms, dads, sisters, uncles, kids, youth, fighting for clean air and to address climate. And so, yeah, you just join the team. There's actually a team in Texas. There's actually a part of the Moms Clean Air Force called Eco Madres. And so we do have resources for the Latinx community. So in addition to the Moms Clean Air Force, Houston actually has a group called the Houston Climate Movement. And I encourage everyone to join that. You know, now that we're more stay at home and everything's virtual, it's so much easier to participate in meetings. If you have a phone or a tablet or a laptop, you can join a meeting. You don't have to show your face. You just sign on and you get to hear great information. And if you have something to say, you can say it. That's the great thing about what's happening right now, is that if you aren't taking this time to improve your skills, to get involved, then you don't want to do better, because there's just so many ways to get active and be involved. Yes, it's hard to be a regular citizen because we still have to worry about COVID and school and work and not having enough money. But being involved helps lessen that. When you create a community for yourself, there's people that are on your team. And so, yes, use this time to join these groups, whether it's the Houston Climate Movement, the City of Houston Sustainability's work group, Moms Clean Air Force. There's just so many organizations. And again, I will list all of these. You could call them, you could check them out online, but they're available to serve you.
Definitely, I agree. I agree with that statement. If during this time in the pandemic, and if you're staying at home, you should improve yourself. Be part of different organizations if you have the time to do that, and it's really easy. Sometimes if you don't know what organization to join or is there any, just go on Facebook and click on the events, and you can see all the events that are going to be available for that week or for that day, and then you click on the organization, so you're able to, join their Zoom. Sometimes they're public, so you just click and you have to register, and then just join their Zoom meetings and from your home, from your house, and from your phone, and you are able to learn information. Sometimes you learn information that some politicians are sharing, and like today we are here live on in Community Advisors RSR, and this is we're here. We're all community leaders. We're not politicians, and we're trying to share information. We're not. Eduardo is part of an organization. Catherine Garcia Flowers is part of an organization. I'm part of an organization as well. So, hey, whenever we're not live, you can go and figure out what organization you want to join, and you can improve yourself by joining those organizations, getting information, and improving your life.
And you know what's interesting? Because it's not just joining. Just for people who aren't technology savvy, there's still people who don't use Facebook other than just to look at pictures. Did you know that Harvard University is giving free classes? No prerequisite, no, like literally, as we're talking about this, I said Harvard, right? And our phones are near our computer. Guess what? Harvard's going to pop up on your phone and or even on your television, like some kind of commercial is going to come up. Because the universe is tying everything. It's all about marketing and advertising. So for those people who don't necessarily say, I don't know how to use Facebook, Google. You can Google anything. YouTube has every kind of class and information and workshop. You just pick a word and you search it, and thousands of resources will pop up for that. And so it's so important. Again, the first step begins with you. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to not feel sorry for yourself. You have to want to get connected, because it really is there for us. Like, we really can do better. Houston, again, the most diverse city in the nation, and we represent the Latinx community is the largest demographic. Come on, guys, we gotta show up. We have to be represented.
I agree. We're the largest population, but then again, for some reason, we are not the population that is represented either in politics or in community organizations or any type of involvement. We need to increase that. As me and Eduardo, we talk a lot about it, and we talk about it here in community advisors a lot. That we need to get more involved in all aspects of life, professionally, in community as well, in politics, because we need to be there for whenever they're talking about, whenever they're distributing resources, whenever there's be politics, like with the redistricting or X, Y, and Z. We have to be there in the table. We
Right.
earn a spot. We have to be there, but for some reason we're not there yet. Us ourselves, we just have to have that final push, and hopefully we're gonna in the future years we're gonna be able to do that. And we're working with different people, me and Eduardo, and trying to get that done. I know that you yourself also are doing it, and hopefully we can accomplish that in the future, getting more Hispanic Latinos out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because as you were saying that, I'm thinking about the Hispanic Chamber, and then there's the Entrepreneur Chamber, and yeah, again, there are resources for us. We just have to want to be there.
Definitely. Eduardo, any questions that you might have in terms of resources or organizations? I know that you're very involved, and today we have Catherine Garcia Flowers, who is part of a lot of organizations and fights for the environment. Any interesting questions that you might have? I know you have 1,000 questions, but in terms of yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, most of my questions have to do with the areas that she's very familiar with, of course, and that has to do with the environment and pollution in general, air quality, both in and out of the buildings that our kids go to, because that's one of the primary concerns for us is, we don't get an opportunity to talk enough about the public school system, the different public buildings that we have to work in or go to. And some of these buildings are old. Some of these buildings literally downtown are over 100 years old. They just been refabbed and made pretty and painted, but they're still old. Like the bones are still old. The schools, I know for a fact, there's a couple of schools that I've been to that I've had to actually go in and help the principal and the teachers on weekends scrape paint and paint the doors and put in new caulking on windows and so on, because the school didn't have the resources to take care of just minor everyday maintenance like that. Can you imagine the stuff that they're not doing, like air quality, like asbestos, like those things, because that's real money. That's something that it really hits the pocketbook of a lot of companies, school, public, private, doesn't make a difference. So that's my, I guess my question in those areas are, how or does the organizations in and around Houston and Harris County, do they get guidance and federal money and grants and matching funds from the different agencies that help for that type of stuff?
The answer is yes. So what's interesting about public schools, and we just seem to be in denial about it. The public schools that do well are the schools where parents are involved. And so we have way too many schools where there is zero parent participation. And that could be for a lot of reasons. But, where you put your time and money is what you value most. And so as parents, Yes, our children are important to us. Education is important, but it goes a little further. School is not a babysitting service, right? Again, those schools that do well, their parents are there they're volunteering, they're raising money. You know, the PTA and PTO are active organizations that make sure that kids have the resources that the school can't afford. And another thing that people don't understand is that each school is like its own business. And so the principal literally runs that school. And so if her priority is sports, she might not be thinking about facility and who's holding her accountable. So if no one's holding the principal accountable, then nothing's going to change. And so being involved in schools isn't as hard as people think, right? It's not just going to pick up report cards. Because nowadays with technology, it's so easy to get involved. You can send an email, you can call your teachers now, you can call the school. Again, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so it's so important that whether it's school, whether it is your church, whatever it is, things that miracles are done by regular people, right? Like the universe uses regular people to do extraordinary things every day. And so part of the solution is us, is the community. It's showing up on behalf of the issue that we want to address. But yes, there is resources. Yes, the federal government, especially now in the CARES Act, is hundreds and thousands. I mean, they're now our budgets are now $1 billion budgets. When we were growing up, billion wasn't the word, right? Like I didn't even know $1 billion was a thing. Like that, we thought that was a make-believe thing. Billion, trillion, gazillion, yeah, but we're here. We're in that future.
Yeah. And it's so true what you're saying. I literally heard yesterday that Elon Musk is on track to be the first trillionaire. Unbelievable.
Ooh, I was getting so excited. I choked myself. Because, it's interesting. Education, because I have children, and I believe I have extraordinary children. And I've actually created schools, and I've served on school boards. And I remember as a parent, I was just a parent. I shouldn't say just a parent, because being a parent is so important. But I was advocating, and other parents used to come up to me and say, "Are you crazy?" Like there was this one parent, literally, who came up to me and said, "Are you on drugs? Like, what kind of drugs do you take? Because I want those drugs." And I felt insulted because you're asking me if I'm on drugs because I come to the school every week because I want to make sure my kid is. At the time, I was president of the PTO. But it was because I wanted to know what was going on with my children. So yeah, sometimes our own people will discourage us, but the sky is the limit. Another story that I like to tell a lot, and if I can inspire anyone who's listening or as we talked, being Latinx as a woman isn't easy. Right? Like traditionally, like my father, his machizo, he thought women were designed to serve him. Like he didn't really respect that women could be leaders. And so I grew up in a household where they just wanted me to be a mom. But they would be like, why do you want a job? Like, why do you want to go to school? You know what I mean? So it's about a value system. But if there is something inside of you, if you want to do more, don't let anyone put that fire out. It doesn't matter your circumstances. Doesn't matter if you feel like you don't have enough. Being involved really does make all the difference in the world. We're not defined by other people. I actually spent, my grandmother died some years ago, and she lived on the island of Rattan. And I spent 2 years with her, like 2 years with the community. And I was still working from Honduras, and I taught school. I did a bunch of other things. And one day I looked at my grandmother, because I used to lay down with her every night. And I said, Abuelita, if you could give me one word of advice that you would want me to take, like if you would want me to do one thing over, what would that be? And I couldn't wait to hear what she would say, because after spending so much time with my grandmother, I could feel her love, right? Like I had enjoyed spending time with her. And but she said to me, you need to go get a husband. You work too hard. She started saying all these things that I thought was negative, and my heart was broken because I thought that she had valued that I was there and that I wasn't relying on anybody. And I'm not saying having a husband isn't bad. And at one point in my life, I had a husband and it didn't work out. But sometimes we are carrying old values, old traditions that don't necessarily apply now. And so we all have a role, whether you're a woman, whether you're a child, whether you're a student, whether you are a man who has to switch industries because construction isn't working. There's a time and place for everything, and we all add value. Like each of us brings something to the table. And so it's so important that we recognize that and value each other and see each other as a community and as the resource.
Good. That was right. I believe that was well said as well. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to, go through here in the United States. We're less than 300 years old. These are
Right.
growing pains that we're going through.
Right.
And it takes time for us to get things back together.
I agree. But it's also important that we talk about it, that we give permission. Because a lot of times people think, oh, that's the way it's always been, or I can't do that, or I'm afraid to say it out loud. But it's okay to have conversations.
It's not to say that it's that the old is wrong, but
Right.
it should be valued differently. I think. For instance, I remember when I was growing up, I could go down to tons of stores that no longer exist, Montgomery Ward being one of them, and my dad would buy me some cowboy boots that I would use every single day when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't think anything of them; they were just cowboy boots. I got them muddy. I did whatever I needed to do with them, and so on and so forth. But as I got older, I realized the value of a good set of boots, a good set of shoes. And I wanted the traditional, I wanted the old, I wanted the foundation of good shoes, not the flamboyant, Air Jordans, although they're not bad. I'm saying that they're not bad. I'm just saying that as you get older, you remember looking back and thinking, wow, my grandpa used to wear this kind, and think, wow, that was cool. Now it's even cooler. We sit down and we drink wine, but we drink wine that has a history behind it, not brand new wines. But at the same time, if we don't try the new wines, we'll never know if they're any good. So that balance is, I think, very difficult for a lot of people right now. The older generation, 60 and above, which is pretty much my demographic, they hang on to the past with a passion. They want to pass that on to the next generation, the 40 through 60, which is cool. They're trying to accept it, but they're kind of caught in the middle as the 30 and under. They've never been around without internet, so their concept of what is, a valued antique, I guess, for lack of a better term, is different. They understand it, they do, but their way of looking at it is different than mine. Go back and I try to find. I'll give you a great example. When I go get shoes, for instance, I like leather soled shoes, full leather soled shoes. I have a pair of shoes that I bought when I started. A long time ago, one of my first jobs. They're at least 30 years old, and they still are good. I've got two pair of boots that I take back every now and then to get resold, and I still use them. But that's because I bought them for the quality. Um, and that's good. The problem is not that. The problem is we have a generation that doesn't understand that we need to move forward. But in order to move forward, we've got to remember a little bit of the past, not all of it. Just got to remember we've got a foundation somewhere, and then from there we need to leap because I know that people stand on my shoulders to move forward. I hope so. I hope I didn't work 60 years of my life that somebody could sit there and not utilize all the information that we're talking about right now. I know that that's crucial, and I want the same thing. I want to introduce people that I know of, young, middle aged, some of those that are my age, to you and your organizations, so they can get a perspective, a good perspective, of what is out there as far as a new challenge. I grew up in West Texas. Climate was every day, but it wasn't the way it's looked at today. It was you get up in the morning. If it was sunny, you went to work. If it was going to rain, you put on a jacket, so on and so on. And it was snow in the winter and hot in the summers. But we didn't understand why there was more rain, why there was more snow, why the droughts were taking place. We didn't understand all that. We just dealt with it. But that's a big issue today that if we don't address. We're going to have a very hard time, all of us living in the future, because there won't be enough food. There won't be enough livestock, and the T-bone steaks that we enjoy today are going to be very far and few between 50, 60 years from now if we don't start moving around and trying to make things happen. I hope I have a good insight. I try to, hang on to the ideas that your organization, yourself, and others like you offer, because I don't want my kids to be left out. And for me, that's a big deal, because that's all I have left is passing everything on that I have to them. But I don't want them to be stuck in the old past either. I want them to realize I did what I did so that they can do what they do. Does that make sense?
I'm so glad you said all of that, because you're absolutely right. Do y'all remember that movie Mad Max? The Mad Max movie? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh.
I think so. Yes, I think we do.
It was one of those. If you Google it, it's funny. It was with Mel, that actor Mel, the famous. I think he's Australian. Anyway.
Yes. Yes, I know which one you're talking about.
Do you know that movie is 2021? So, like, when that movie was made, they were saying 2021 was the future. We're really living in the future. So there's so many things that we have to do to catch up so that we could do better, so that there is a future, a real future for our children and our future grandchildren. But it's all going to be dependent on us.
Yes, definitely. We have to take responsibility for our actions, and that's what we're trying to do by sharing as much information as possible here, and hopefully people listen and they take action, and since like you had mentioned before, those actions sometimes are small, like being part of those who are parents, being part of their being part of their kids' education in their school, joining and helping that school become a better place. Like Eduardo, thank you, Eduardo, what you have done for schools. I know that you just mentioned that you had, help schools doing labor work, knowing that you have an extensive background in government and in politics organization, you still go out there and help the community physically. So that's good. That shows a lot. So yes,
Yeah. No matter how big we are, how much money we have, how much money we don't have, how many children you have, how old you are, how young you are, each and every one of us can make a difference. It's
yes,
it's it's not always about the big picture things. We don't have to be Mr. Musk who wants to be a trillionaire. I mean, I was just so inspired just now as he talked about, because sometimes some of us don't have those memories, right? If my father was a seaman, so he was always gone. But it doesn't mean that people aren't showing up every day in your community. They don't have to post
right.
it on social media. And your investment, that time you gave, I'm sure has multiplied what was given to that school because you took the time to do a thing that needed to be done. And that's part of our responsibility as humans, right? That's what love is. You know, there's that saying, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, loving yourself starts with showing up.
Definitely. Uh, Eduardo, I think we lost Catherine for a minute up here. So
I'm here.
oh, you're there.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it shows. It says on air. You're in the show. Everyone can see and hear you. But time flies when you're having fun. I can't believe it's 8 o'clock already.
Yes,
It's
definitely.
8 o'clock.
Yes. Usually we last for an hour and 15 minutes, and yeah, it goes by. Sometimes we have a lot of questions that we want to ask. We want to ask those guests that we invite because they have a lot of information, like today, and there's a lot of questions that we want to ask. But thank you for joining us today, Eduardo. Thank you also for joining us. Any final comments, Eduardo or Catherine, for our viewers, for our public who every Monday and at 7 p.m. they join us here on Facebook Live and on, and on Twitter Live and on YouTube. Who are watching us? Any comments? Any final comments?
Well, I want to offer, and there's a couple of other resources that people don't know about. I just want to make sure they have. Food is such a sensitive issue right now. The Bread of Life downtown at St. John's Church every Wednesday has one of the largest distributions of food and other kinds of resources. They have washing powder and all kinds of stuff. It's not just food, but the food bank does give food, but there's other sponsors who bring in hand sanitizers and gloves and other things that people may need. They start at 8 o'clock in the morning. Definitely recommend if you're in need of anything, check that out, Bread of Life. And then another organization, it's called Capital Idea. Capital Idea. And again, I will post all these resources. They have some, interesting programs. They pay you to go to school. They have free training. So that is definitely a resource if you are unemployed right now or if you don't have enough skills. Capital Idea is a resource that you want to get connected with. And then for those who feel like they are struggling with the internet or they can't afford the internet, Xfinity has a program right now where they're charging only $10 a month for the low to moderate income community. And so you can't be prideful. Again, if you need something, if you qualify for a resource, go get it. Because when you don't, and this is something I want people to really understand, because I think Harvey was a great demonstration. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people were affected by Harvey. And Latin communities were very affected because a lot of them were undocumented, or, they just had issues where they did not ask for help. And so when the resources came down, it's based on who is saying that they need them. So if 10,000 households needed to have their houses demolished, but only 1,000 households reported that they needed it, that means 9,000 households full of resources didn't come to Houston because nobody documented that we needed it. So even if you feel like you're not entitled, it is so important that you find a way to connect. You don't have to give up your personal information, but you can connect with so many different agencies that will just document the need, that will get reported either to the city or to the county. So again, everybody is having their needs met. Did y'all know that we have the largest food bank in the world? It's crazy. Houston actually has the largest food bank in the world. But guess what? People are still hungry. That means there's not enough resources. But it also means people aren't saying that they need it. Texas has the largest number of minimum wage employees. That's crazy. But that also means that people are spending 60 to 80% of their income on rent. Or don't even talk about electricity, how much electricity is. There's just so many issues, right? And so sometimes people are hungry because rent was due and the electricity bill was due. Or you need gas in your car. And so it's not, if you need, people have to know. We have to find their, because it's not fair. So when we talk about justice and all this inequity, it's that. Like, how do we let people make minimum wage in the most philanthropic city in the nation? Why are people spending all of their money in rent? Why is rent so high? Where's the subsidy? So I could go on and on and on. But these are real problems. And we need real solutions. But we need real people to demand it. We need real people to say, yes, my family isn't happy. There are families living 2 to 3 families in a household. And they need, and yes, someone should be providing it because the resources are there.
Definitely, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And we're talking about resources available. We're looking to have whenever COVID started, we had a doctor who was coming here in the show and here at Community Advisors RSR, and he gave us a presentation of how to deal with a COVID. And he's coming back to do a live show with us here and talk about how do you go about once you get COVID, once you're sick and you feel sick about COVID and going to the hospital, and what happens if the hospital, once they check you in, but then they release you, but you feel really sick and you know that you're not going to end up well if you go back to your house or home. So therefore, he's going to come out and here and talk to us. How do you tell the doctor and the nurse that they have to, legally admit you to the hospital and you can stay there, not
Right.
because they're Hispanic, they just gonna kick you out because he's gonna even talk about a situation that he dealt with, he himself being a doctor and being in the hospital and dealing with that situation itself. So resources are available for the community and all should take advantage of that if you need those resources. And sometimes there might be people who are not very nice. And whenever there's people who are not very nice, there's usually a protocol, a form of that you have to follow how to make a complaint. And usually those people either they get fired or those people, they somebody tells them something because their role is to serve the community, not to harm the community.
Absolutely.
Yes, it seems that we lost Edward. Any final comments? I know I already mentioned it once, but any final comments, Catherine, before we end the show today?
Thank you. My final comment is that I am so grateful for people like you who understand and selflessly give. The world is a better place because you are in it and you're committed to making sure that this happens. So I'm grateful that you would even include me. Again, I will send a list where folks can find these organizations on social media and get connected. But I just want to communicate how grateful I am.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for all who are watching us today, and all have a blissful evening, night, and stay safe.